Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Baka podcast.
Baka. It's amazing how every time you open your mouth, you prove you're an idiot.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Baka. We are an anime podcast. Every 2 weeks, we watch an anime. We come together on this podcast. We talk about it like we're a book club, and then we turn the discussion over to our various comment sections so that they can continue said discussion in a much more enlightened manner than we are capable of. That is the premise of our show. We did watch a brand new anime that was on Netflix. It's called Beastars.
Also known as Troy's favorite furries.
You're going to hear that joke a lot.
It's because I'm juvenile.
You can't talk about Beastars without those jokes. I've seen like 3 YouTube videos about Beastars. They all make the same joke. It's coming.
Okay, good.
We'll talk about it more too. To discuss this very funny furry anime, I have my co-host. First off, we have the stripes to my zebra, Jeremy. How you doing, man?
I'm doing pretty good. Been getting some sun. School's finally slowing down, so I have a little bit of time, and we're gonna get a couple of goats. Yeah, I'm not crazy.
Yeah,
we're getting
not
a couple
boats.
Of goats. That's
Goats.
right, not boats. Yep. So I get to build a cool goat house. So I've been starting to do that on this weekend.
How many goats you getting?
Probably just 2. Either a Nubian or a Nigerian dwarf, because both of those are good for milking. One of them's a little bit more fatty milk.
How much you can charge for their fingers?
I know, right?
All right.
Depends on how much you're willing to pay.
We also have the zipper to my fursuit, Jason.
Oh,
At least I get some mileage.
How you doing?
Doing all right. Quarantine is we're still in quarantine, depending on when you watch this. Has been fantastic. In fact, we got extended to the 31st, so that's fantastic. But between missions of Call of Duty with Troy, I picked up XCOM Chimera Squad. That had just come out. A bit disappointing. If you're looking for a really simple strategy game, it's definitely something you could probably blast through in an afternoon. But it's it's definitely XCOM light, and there's not a lot to it, I found. So, but it's an extension of the lore, so I definitely wanted to check it out. But
what would you rate it 1 to 5?
as an XCOM fan, I would rate it a 2 or a 1. As a strategy fan, I'd probably rate it around a 3.
Okay.
Okay.
It's not what I wanted from an XCOM game. Let's put it that way.
And my name is Troy. And Gadget from the Rescue Rangers was my first childhood crush.
I believe it.
But I
But who
finished
wasn't she?
Final Fantasy VII Remake. And in normal mode, I'm actually going back for hard mode. I know Jeremy is too. He's also finished it. I loved it. It made me fall in love with JRPGs over again. As much as like I liked Kingdom Hearts 3, I'm like, this is the jam. This is now the bar. Everything's got to be judged by this. I loved it. The lore stuff they've done, I'm totally into. So no complaints from me. Other than that, still rewatching Scrubs, and the lawyer from Scrubs died. He literally passed away yesterday before we recorded this, and I've been watching him almost every single day, making jokes, and then find out he died, and I was like, oh man, this is really rough times right now. But I did have this wonderful anime to get me through, so let's start with talking about that. We're gonna go to non-spoiler reviews. Jason, what did you think of Beastars?
It was good. I enjoyed myself. Definitely had had a little bit too much of the romance, like teen romance part, which I'm not a big fan of. But the overarching story, the themes, dealing with a similar Zootopia world, but a bit darker. And also the like political implications that they get into later on in the story make for a really intriguing world to sink into. And the characters are really relatable. So I had a good time watching it.
All right, Jeremy, how about you?
I thought it was pretty good. I got Tanya to watch the whole thing with me, and it's a lot of the same ideas, I think, as what Jason had. Except I really wanted something more dark, a bit more tragic. Yeah.
That sounds about right for you.
Yeah.
I am a big fan of this anime. The animation and just kind of the weirdness of the trailer when it first came on Netflix caught my eye. I had already watched it. When I watched it, I was like, there's no way we could do this for the podcast. I don't think I could talk Jeremy and Jason into this. This is definitely, it's very unusual and unique, which is very much my jam. I actually think the worst thing it has going for it is that it's about animals. So people will look at it and say, oh, that's for people who enjoy animals.
Okay, hold on. There's plenty of Disney properties that people don't think that about. It's the subject matter happens to be a bit more adult.
It is very mature subject matter, and
the animals are doing things.
If you enjoy that kind of thing, this is definitely for you. But I think saying that's all it is definitely what is its biggest issue, because it has really deep characters, really deep world building, and I'm really fascinated by the story. And it has like a Nor theme going through it that, again, something I love. So I love everything about it, and I don't mind a good sappy romance about a wolf and a rabbit, you know?
Yeah, me too. Me too, Jason.
I know.
No, it's, tickle.
Okay, your guys' thoughts on the opening and closing.
I thought they were pretty great. The music it fit the visuals, but the visuals were pretty good. Jeremy has a lot more in depth as far as like what they mean, so I'll let him get into it. But I love the changing art styles as the anime progresses, because and it even does it in the episode sometimes. But that stop motion with the yarn was pretty fantastic.
Oh man, yeah. I don't know what it is about stop motion photography. There's something creepy about it, but it's also like, I don't know, it's so cool looking. And so the intro just got me every single time. I didn't watch it every time, but I mean, normally I watch it once at the beginning and once at the end. So watching it 4 or 5 times is really saying something. Mm-hmm. And it had so much meaning in it. Just the way that it had them like stalking, not really stalking each other, but like hiding sort of between what I thought initially were trees, but turned out to be horns on a deer. And like, just like so many cool things. And then he just scenes. At first I thought it was going to be like a scene by scene thing where they'd go and they'd do stop motion photography for each episode, because it kind of takes a scene from the first episode and just kind of runs with that. But it stops the scene as it happens in the episode and kind of almost jumps into the wish fulfillment of one of the characters, and that becomes the rest of the intro scene. And just it was so cool. And the way it ends is just it's I thought it was foreshadowing the whole time, and this is spoiler free, so I won't say anything more about it other than it was very touching, and I was very concerned every time that I'd watch, each episode. I was like, what's gonna happen? As far as the outro goes, there's just what Jason was pointing out, how there's multiple ways that they portray the same actions in these endings, right? Like you have the same steps that the main character goes through because he's the focus of these outros, but the colors used and even the images that move around in the background completely change, and I think it corresponds to his emotional state of mind at the time. Whether or not he's feeling romantic, whether or not he's feeling inspired, or whether or not he's feeling, well, instinctual. We'll just say that. And I thought that was just brilliant. That was so cool. One last thing I wanted to point out about the intro was that in the part where he's like dancing with the rabbit in the intro, there is a Russian cartoon called let's see, I think it's called No Pagadi, but it stands for Well, Just You Wait, and it is about a wolf and a rabbit, and the wolf is always hunting the rabbit, and the rabbit is just an obnoxious little twerp. But here's the thing that's so weird about this is that whenever the wolf gets a hold of the rabbit, most of the time, he dances with the rabbit, and then he's going to eat him, and the rabbit always gets away, and the wolf screams, "Well, just you wait." And just the way that they draw it in the old Russian cartoons, these are from like the 70s. Tanya's maybe watched a few of them in the past. This reminded both of us so much of that old Russian cartoon. It's uncanny. It was really crazy, this intro. Yeah.
So my thoughts that don't echo your guys's, because I do echo a lot of yours, except for the Russian cartoon thing, which I haven't seen.
Expand your horizons, man.
Wild Side, the song in the intro is a banger, and I love that song so much now. It's so good. What I want to say is this is made by Studio Orange, who also did Land of the Lustrous, which we found very entertaining when we watched it on this podcast. And after it just in the frame of what they did with this intro and that outro, I think they are one of the ballsiest studios that is creative out there. Like, they are doing radical stuff, and they have almost no fear of being creative and taking risks, doing stop motion animation for the themes in the intro and making it work so well, and adapting a manga that has got to be a challenge. Like, hey, well, we're gonna do like cartoon animals that eat each other. Okay, let's do it. We were just doing crystal people, but all right. Yeah. Bravo to them.
I would echo that 100% because their animation flow and camera work is top notch. And the thing is that a lot of people, there's a big rift between traditional drawings and 3D animation. And when you have like Knights of Sidonia or Ajin, they've got their own style, even though it's all 3D. It can be a bit jarring for someone that might be coming from, say, Princess Mononoke, right? But the animation is specifically like Land of Lustrous was fantastic, but the animation in Beastars is, from the slow parts to the fight scenes, is beautiful. And the thing is like one big complaint I remember with like the first Transformers is like the fast movement of you couldn't tell what was going on. Fast movement with this is clear and really captures your attention. And yeah, you're right. The studio is doing fantastic work.
Absolutely. All right, so from there, we're going to go into spoiler territory. So we will be discussing the plot of Beastars. It is currently on Netflix. It's one of those shows you had to wait a while for it to show up, but now it's here. It's on Netflix. If you haven't seen it and we've captured your interest enough, it's a good time to turn off the podcast and go watch it and then come back. But we're going to be spoiling from here on out, so here we go. We start with the scene that's really the heart of everything that's happening, which is our main character, Legoshi, who is a giant gray wolf high schooler at this boarding school, tackling our other main character, Haru, a small white dwarf rabbit, who's also a year older than him, to kill her. And that's how we're introduced to this series. So we need to talk about both these characters. First up is Legoshi. Like I said, he's a gray wolf. He's huge, he's powerful, and he hunches, and he doesn't want you to know that he is huge and he is powerful. What do you guys think of him?
This is one of the most compelling main characters I've seen in quite some time. Not only is his arc throughout this anime really interesting to watch, but his character flaws are, even though he's a wolf and we're talking about, him eating another herbivore, you can replace that with just about any other negative instinctual emotion or action that humans create, and it's 100% relatable. But also this idea that he's constantly looking for a way to lose fights. He's constantly looking for ways to seem small and weak. And I've never seen that so dramatically done for a protagonist before. And that was like the focus of their everyday life, was not just how do I fit in, but how do I fit in a way to where I don't seem like a scary monster. Because really, to all the herbivores around him, he has the potential to be one of the scariest there. In fact, there's one scene later on that he complains he's getting taller and bigger. And, his complicated arc is fascinating to watch, and that's one of the reasons I like this anime so much.
They did such a good job with having him not sure about his intentions toward Haru. And like you said, Troy, that's the heart of this anime, this scene at the beginning, which really plays out as whether or not he wants to eat her or he loves her. And he doesn't really know. Like, is this in a prey instinct manifesting in a different way? Like, she's my prey kind of thing. Or does he actually genuinely have feelings for her? And I kind of have to separate it from myself because it seems so silly because it's a wolf and a rabbit I'm talking about. But yeah, like, do these two teenagers, does he actually have feelings for her? Does he want to eat her? This is like furry Twilight. is kind of what's going on here.
Definitely a better love story than
Oh
Twilight.
my god.
Yeah. So with that in mind, I have to compliment what they did with him because I didn't know. And a lot of times, at least in the anime that I've seen, the stories, the characters have just a few too many tells. They're a little bit too certain one way or the other. I can usually guess. I can usually tell, and I'm pretty frequently right. I had no idea where he was going with this, and I really enjoyed that. I thought that was really cool. And I mean, there were scenes that even surprised me in just how his relationship, I mean, I don't want to get into Haru because I know she's going to get her own moment in the spotlight, but just half of his character is Haru, really, and the relationship between the two of them. But yeah, he was, I mean, he's a timber wolf. He's one of the big predators. And yeah, I want to know what his story is. I want to know what his background is because he's one of the only ones we haven't learned.
That's true.
Mm-hmm.
I really, when I watched this the very first time, I found myself really drawn to Legoshi, and not as I was a powerful person walking around high school, but I was trying to hide it. But I definitely walk with, even now, I hunch really bad, and I'm shy. The way he has conversations with people, and we hear he's talking at the speed of light in his head, but out loud he's like, "Hey, are you going to lunch?" Like, well, he's like, "Oh my god, why would you say that? You gotta think better." And it's like, that was definitely me in high school. That still happens to me now. They're so relatable. His awkwardness, his shyness, and there's a real amazing vulnerability in there, built in around his, well, what he is. And what's really great about this anime is that it takes this predator and prey thing that can't exist in the real human world, and you can use it to substitute for many things. Then it's exploring social ideas. You could do racism, you could do sexism, you could do classism, but it's not any of those things. But it kind of also is. It's just hey, society problems are complex, aren't they? And he's a character who's ashamed of just being born the way he is, because in this world, people like him sometimes do bad things, even though but then there's also a part of him that desires that bad things, and he has to deal with that shame, but at the same time, by embracing that part of himself, he's turning into an actual person. He's coming out of depression. He's actualizing as a character. He's fascinating to watch this whole thing. And I love my favorite moments with him are, we see a lot of from his point of view. He's the narrator. He's always talking. And then every once in a while we get to see him from the other character's point of view. He'll put his hand on the wall and they see giant monstrous claws like in their face. And all he was doing was hey, wait a second. It's an amazing dichotomy.
Hey, drink.
Yeah.
Yum, yum. It's been a while.
Getting to see both sides.
Yep.
It's funny that you mentioned that, because there's one scene in particular that grabbed me with that. You have this in a lot of romantic style of stories where the girl gets upset, so she goes to walk away, and the guy wants to grab her hand, to continue the conversation. The size of his hand basically gets not only her hand, but also like up into her like bicep. Like he's so big compared to her, and it's like, oh, he's literally a giant monster compared to her. But I think what's really nice about this particular protagonist as well versus other anime is that, there wasn't 5 different love interests and he's showing them all affection, right? Or he wasn't the most popular and he's got to fight off the hordes of fans, right? He's very much a background character in his own life, even though he's the protagonist of this story. And I found that really refreshing.
That's a good point. All right, so on to, the character about to be eaten, Haru, the dwarf white rabbit. She is a senior at this boarding school, and she is known as the school slut. She sleeps with many of the guys, and all the other girls bully her because of this, and yet she is probably considered like the weakest, most... what does she phrase it in the English dub? That you'll die first is how her mom always told her. So what did you guys think of Haru?
Talk about a complicated character. At first, I thought it just came down to, rabbits have lots of babies, so she's kind of playing into that mold. And then once we find out more about her backstory and why she feels she needs to engage in this in order to feel some sort of validation as a person, it was like, oh crap. Like, there's a lot under the surface here. Yeah. And they write every single character like this, and it's amazing. But she wasn't my favorite character in the story, but I thought she was integral to it because you've got the dichotomy between her and Legoshi is
been a while.
It brought it back.
2 for 2. It works out really well. Her as a character on her own was really fascinating to watch. Not only having her deal with the bullying, but also the bad stuff she gets into later, and also her interactions with the males in her life, and how she seems to have a really hard persona in order to survive in this world.
Yeah, I think that's what fascinated me the most about her, is that she is tough and courageous. Just seeing, like you guys pointed out, her situation in life is one of the worst. I mean, in this world where this means survival, right? How small you are. When there's something called a big predator, a large predator, there's several of them in your class with you. You know that they're all over the place out there. There's dark markets, black market basically, for meat. It's just, you're counting the days to die. In the sub, the mother said it'll be very easy for you to die, but I think the English term, or the English phrase, would have been much better. I like that much better. It makes more sense with her character.
No, in the English, I watched the English dub, So what she said exactly, I believe, was if something goes down, you're first to go. Like you're first to die.
Yeah, I like that. I like that better. That I don't believe that was what they said in the.
It isn't. So to be honest, I watched English dub both times, but for notes, sometimes I turned on the subtitles, and I did notice turn of phrases were specifically different. Shishigami was at a pond versus a lake. Lake in the dub, a pond. So, and yes, and actually at this time I had subtitles on, and I think the subtitles, the mom's like, "You die easily" or something like in dub. It's "You die first."
Yeah, I like "You Die First" better because with that mindset, think of what she could have been like. Her personality could have just been hiding forever in a corner, not wanting to do anything or get involved anywhere. But I think it's unfortunate that she decided that the only recourse she had was to become the school slut because part of her's not proud of it, so she hasn't embraced it. So that means it's something she's ashamed of. But at the same time, having courage to at least go out there and engage in school, stand up on her own, take care of the gardens all by herself. I mean, for God's sake, just getting on the train and leaving the school grounds and going to the city. That sounds terrifying in the shoes of that little tiny rabbit that comes up to like Legoshi's waist. But I do think that, not to get into too weird of a subject, but I thought that just the choice in regards to her size and in comparison to him made certain scenes a little bit more awkward than they normally are in the anime, and I don't think it necessarily did a great service to anime in general. But
I think that might have been by design.
Yeah, it was.
I know we're not a mature rated, but definitely mature content in this podcast.
Yeah.
Could you elaborate a little bit more? Because I don't know if I agree.
I can. Okay, so I'll elaborate a little bit. I have heard the argument many, many times that anime is essentially as close to pedophilia as you can get without actually being pedophilia. And I completely disagree with that, 100%. But in this anime, having a character who is literally as tall as his waist in that compromising position in bed, I'm like, oh, I don't like this. She's too much like a child.
To be fair, when she's with others of her size, she seems like a well-developed rabbit.
Yeah. And Tanya even pointed out, she's fully grown. She's got breasts, she's got hips. She's not a child, it's clear. But there's just this sense of like, well, this certainly isn't going to help the argument. Because people that are already making the argument are ignoring those things on full-grown women that are, the same height as their male protagonists.
I do see your point, and it didn't even cross my mind during it. Because what I was going to say, while I love the character of Haru, I love how strong she is. I loved how the bedroom is where she's the predator to Legacy becomes the prey. And which is, again, the reason she partakes in this is to balance out that power with her and other animals. But one thing I really liked about this was how it portrayed sex. Even when she undresses, it feels so different from like regular fan service. Like it wasn't panty peeks. This is a woman who's taking off her clothes because she chooses to, and she also wasn't just horny anime girl either, because she has this social, emotional reason for choosing this behavior. I never found the sexy scenes that sexy except for one line. One line she has is probably one of the sexiest dialogue lines I've ever heard in my life. But we'll get to that. But I just found it like really mature scenes from people who know what two people in bed actually are like. Like there was no anime heightenedness to it, in my opinion. I thought it was a better portrayal of men and women. Nobody knows, but obviously Legoshi gets scared. But it just felt more, and how it's awkward in the first time. That all felt so realistic, which was weird because it is animals we're watching.
Right.
I think my favorite part about that first whole exchange is he's so wrapped up in his own head, he doesn't even notice what's going on in front of him.
Yeah, yeah. Yep. Yeah, and I totally agree with you, Troy, with everything except for the one scene where she's with Legoshi and they almost get it on. They don't wind up doing it. But during that scene, that was the only time where I was like, whoa, that size difference is just really uncomfortable.
I do see what you're saying now about the size difference. And I probably, like I said, I didn't even notice because very much established in this world, animals are just very different sizes. We have mice.
Yeah,
we have
exactly.
different size doors. We have mice that go by your feet.
They literally have to try not to step on some of these students. Yeah,
that's why they tell us to go down the wall.
But if someone's if someone was watching a YouTube video and just clicked on that scene, without any of the context that the anime provides, I could not. Now that you've said it, I'm like, oh yeah, that could definitely be, again, like you said, not helping the argument.
Yeah. This is a cherry pick scene, and people will cherry pick it.
All right, we're going to go on with the story. So like I said, it starts with that scene, and then we jump away from it, because that's the end of this episode that we've actually seen. And then we go to a scene of an alpaca running through the halls, being hunted down by some other student, some predator student, who murders him. And
he's already injured.
Yeah, I thought this was a murder mystery, and they don't spend much time investigating.
No, they don't.
And then we come to a girl alpaca who was in the drama club with the victim, and she's talking with their friends, and they're talking about drama club, and she goes to drama club, and everyone's eyeballing the wolf, who just kind of hides behind the lights. He works the lights up in the rafters, right? And they show him like peering over the light, and you just see his eyes from the dark, and she's like, oh gosh, that guy's freaky. And she goes to her dorms that night, and she hears someone behind her. She grabs scissors to stab him, and he just grabs her, and he just takes the scissors away. He's like, hey, the guy who died, he was in love with you, and he wrote this love letter, and I went and got it for you, and I wanted to make sure that you got it, because he never got a chance to confess his feelings. And this is like the first time we see Legacy both from another character's point of view, and then get like the real him, which is this very soft-hearted, kind person who doesn't want to be seen as a monster, but literally is a monster to these other characters.
Yeah.
It almost feels like Wreck-It Ralph. He's not the bad guy. He's
exactly.
a bad
guy. Legacy then goes to the memorial, which is, they never even fix this door. There's like this dented-in door where the guy died, and they never bother to fix it. And so there's all these flowers, and he goes to drop off flowers. And another one of our main characters also comes to the memorial. And it's Louis the Red Deer. Louis is the hottest character in the school. Like, he's everyone's favorite. He's the star of the drama club. He's
a rich kid.
One thing that took me a while to wrap my head around, like, the drama club is important in this school. That's like the place to be. Even though apparently it's also filled with freaks, but whatever. Yeah. So Louis is like the king of the school. He's the most popular guy, and he shows up, and Legacy's like, oh my god, it's Louis. Louis here. Your guys' thoughts on Louis, the Red Deer?
Again, just another complicated character that has deep motivations that we're not exposed till later on, and has a facade that is completely justified later on. Because at first, it seems very much rich, snotty, talented school kid that looks down on everyone around him. And then once we find out more about his backstory, you go, oh, that's why he was doing this. That's why he twitched in this scene. This is why he's trying to do a show of force. He looks so far down on Legoshi for acting weak. And he calls him out on it constantly. Like, there's a scene where he comes up behind him after breaking up a fight, and he's like, you were figuring out a way to lose that fight, weren't you? Like, just in his head. And and then the ending scenes with him is just completely was out of left field for me. I did not see that coming, and I hated him up until about episode 8. And then
Wow.
9, 10, 11, 12, I was like, oh, wow. This character not only fits tremendously well into this story, I want to learn more.
I thought that from some of the first encounters that he had, I thought this guy wishes he was a carnivore, and I kind of wonder if he's gonna be like some kind of a fetishistic, cannibalistic herbivore or something. Like those are my suspicions. I'm watching him and I'm like, this guy, he hates but also idolizes carnivores. Like at least their power. He wants their power. What's going on in his head? And then like you said, Jason, when we started to see what his history was, it all just kind of fell into place. It all made sense. And he's a great character. I think one of the funniest moments for me was when we got his little backstory of how he met Haru and found out that he shed his antlers at that point. And I was thinking, at first I was like, wait a minute, how this what deer? I know they shed their antlers, but so I had to look it up. I was like, how frequently do they shed their antlers? Like those are some big antlers he's got on there. And so yeah, for a little while I thought he was running around with fake antlers the whole time. And yeah, I was sadly mistaken. But his character was very, very interesting. I'm not sure what happened to him, or at least I wasn't sure what happened to him when the season ended, because I had to go and look at the wiki for a couple of other things, since I know I'm not going to be coming back to this series. But he actually concerned me enough to look. I was like, what's going on?
It's fascinating. Don't spoil it, but it's
No.
fascinating.
Yeah. Yep.
Also, I think, yeah, the drama club's important for this story arc. I don't think it would be as important if Louis wasn't there, because Louis is definitely being scouted for Beastar, which we'll find out more about what that is later on. But again, the world building in this anime is fantastic. That has all sorts of political ramification of who Beastar is, and it's like, wow, it's not just some stupid drama title. It's an actual societal importance.
Yeah.
So the first time, yeah, you watch the first time I watched Beastar, I'm like, man, this guy is a jerk, and he is a jerk. That is very much presented. The first scene, like he calls Legoshi with him. He goes to the replacement for the victim who's gonna take his place in the drama club, and is like, you don't know your lines, and grabs his face and like, you will learn your dang lines. He's so aggressive, but
And also the goat ate the paper was
I love
pretty
that
funny.
so much. I was laughing so hard.
He's the perfect character for this story because he's Legoshi's opposite. He is born powerless, 1000%, no power, and every scrap of power he has had to earn or he has had to fake, and most of it is fake. He is pretending to be powerful and his goal is to change the world. He wants to save this world. That is the task ahead of him, and he thinks everybody else is in his way, and that's why he hates everybody. He knows he needs to lead them, and he's like, I will inspire you, but he doesn't like any of you people. Get in my way, and you're the worst. But then he sees, like, yeah, guys like Legoshi who have all this power naturally born in, and then are refusing it, and it just breaks his mind, and he can't handle it. He hates Legoshi for it, but they have this huge connection between the two. And Legoshi, on the other hand, is like, man, I was born like this, but you have worked so hard to earn all this, and I have so much respect for you. And he's like, I hate you.
Yep.
Yeah, he's completely fascinating. And then watching it the second time, knowing his backstory, every interaction now has another, that extra depth to it, and it made him such a much more fascinating character when I watched this the second time. Yeah. So also after he harasses the goat there, he calls in one of the actors and he's like, "You're demoted to the art department," and it's like a weasel, and the weasel tries to attack him, and Legoshi blocks it. And he's like, "Oh, okay, I see. You're sticking up for the deer, whatever, man." And then Louis is like frustrated, like, you've got a dark side. You can fight, and you are ready. Like you were ready to fight instantly. You weren't caught by surprise. You were always
that instinct.
That instinct's ready to go. So, but yet here you are pretending like let's all be friends.
In the sub version, it was very interesting because what Louis said was, you bury your fangs to stop a fight.
He said that in the sub too.
In the dub too? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
I thought that was really, really cool. Because that's one of the rules is if you're a carnivore, you cannot bear your fangs at an herbivore. Mm-hmm. But you can bear them at any other carnivore.
It's still considered rude. I think you're bearing your fangs is always rude, but like if you do it to an herbivore, that's like...
Yep. Yeah. You're out.
I couldn't tell the difference between like this character and like feline characters.
Oh.
Just the way he was drawn.
Kai, I don't know if he was like a weasel or an otter or something.
He almost looked like a cat.
Kinda, yeah. Seemed a little bit long.
I noticed there were a lot of cats in the background, and I was like, is that a thing? Is that like there's just always cats?
There was one where it was like it looked like a cat, and then someone called it a proto-simian. And I was like, okay, so there's probably a lot of unusual species here that I'm not recognizing and that I just think are cats, but they're probably something else.
We also get scenes with Haru where she's officially introduced. We see her being bullied as like girls throw her mattress at her from 5 stories up, and like she eats dinner alone. And then this Harlequin rabbit, which is a rabbit that's like half white, half black, she comes up and she's like, "You've been sleeping with my boyfriend?" Haru's like, "Yeah." What? What about it? And so they throw water on her and ruin her dinner.
Yeah.
And that's and this all leads to story points where Legoshi is forced by Louis to be a guard because they're going to do late night practice that they're not supposed to do for this new goat guy who's taking on this role. So he has to stand guard, and I love this scene. I love Legoshi and insects, and it's so consistent. It's a little thing they hit throughout the show. Like he bends down to see a cricket, and how that kind of goes with the theme of he's big and powerful, but he cares about little things. And he smells a dwarf white rabbit walking by, and she senses him, and instincts kick in. She runs, he tackles her, and the episode ends with like his mouth over her as he holds her in his arms. And then we go to the next episode, and he's waking up in the morning, and he's feeling guilty, and he's depressed, and we find out that he didn't eat her. But he had this whole thing about like his instincts awakening, his feral side coming out. There's really like a character of his instincts that's like, oh, but it would feel so good to bite her. But the goat guy comes running out and calling for him, and he gets distracted, and she gets away after he accidentally cuts her arm with his claws. And then when he goes inside, he found out that when the goat fell off the stage and Louis tried to save him, and Louis also fell off the stage and got hurt. And then Louis' like, no, I'm fine. Just ignore it. Don't tell anybody.
Which, again, is hysterical because it's a freaking goat. It's a goat. That thing, even if it did fall off the stage, which is very unlikely, it would be fine. You're an idiot. Right. Louis. You're an idiot. It's a goat.
It also is a really nice character moment for Louis, who's like, I don't care about this guy. I just need this guy to do something. But then when this guy falls, he instinctually tries to help him. Louis, deep down, I think, is a good person. He's just got so much history that it's kind of buried.
I found it interesting that Haru seems to be the only herbivore that kicks Legoshi's instincts into overdrive, where he loses control, or at least loses partial control, because he's surrounded by herbivores every day. But not only does he know her scent extremely well, as the anime goes on, but there's a few times where hers is the only scent that gets him into an animalistic state. And it's I found that interesting, but also a little inconsistent, because it's like, wouldn't any small prey do that to him?
Only the prey he loves.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. I think Jeremy is technically right, even though it is a little bit silly.
Right. No, I think.
And we then go to the scene that we mentioned earlier about these two carnivores start arguing at lunch, and Legoshi jumps up and yells at them to stop, and then one of them's like, "Well, fine, you want to fight me?" And he's coming, a fox coming up to this giant gray wolf, like, "I'll kick your butt." And Legoshi's like, "No, man, I'm sorry," and he's literally thinking in his head, "Okay, how do I lose this and make it look real?"
Yeah, because he's going over like bite force, pressure, claw length, and everything, and he's like, I am more powerful than him in every metric. I could drop some change, maybe. I gotta look for change. Whoops.
And actually, him yelling at them to stop was also a surprise to him. He didn't. It was just kind of instinctual.
Right. So his character arc starts from the moment he tackles Haru. There's now stuff waking up inside him. His real self is coming out. And so, yeah, this catches him off guard. Like, that's not something I do. Why did I do that? And especially, so we're going to talk about Jack later, but his friend Jack is like, wait, what? But it's Louis who shows up and kind of saves the day and talks this guy down with a kind of a, like, if you attack me, you look like a jerk, and if you walk away, you look like a jerk, so now there's nothing you can do, so you might as well leave. And this is when Legoshi kind of thinks, like, man, Louis should be the Beastar, and I think this is, like, one of the first mentions of the Beastar that we get. So the Beastar, as I understand it, is just basically the best chosen from the school, and it doesn't even sound like it's yearly, it's, like, rare. They choose a Beastar who's the best from the school, and while they don't specifically say it, it sounds like carnivores typically are the winners.
So this seems that way, yeah.
This is as implied. This is the first time an herbivore is the go-to choice for the Beastar, and that's going to have. We find out that's going to have major implications for this world. That's a big deal. So thoughts on the Beastar title, which is definitely a central part of the story.
We don't really find out about its importance, like, societally until later. So at this point, it just felt like, an American Idol kind of title. It was very much like, oh, you just become a celebrity. Okay, so what? So at this point, I really didn't care about it. But as we learn later, it can upset the balance of power between these two groups. I found that fascinating, and unfortunately, we don't get to dive too far into it before the season ends. But that is something that I would love to learn more about.
Mm-hmm. I'm curious. I mean, obviously, because it's the name of the anime, it holds pivotal importance for the anime. But yeah, to me, it also seemed very much like a, like you say, American Idol thing, an influencer. And I think that's exactly what it is. I think it is an influencer. But the amount of influence that they can exert can completely change the perception of a particular group. Like, there's the last Beastar, which you were alluding to, Jason, is a lion. And because he's a Beastar and because of the things that he did, he wound up making a better name for lions. So this, of course, changes people's perspectives on carnivores.
Was the mayor the last Beastar?
That's what I thought. Yeah. Wasn't he?
I don't remember them saying he was the Beastar, but again, we watched English dub. Maybe.
Yeah. I don't remember that
I'm
either.
curious. Maybe I misunderstood, but I thought that was.
I knew that he wanted to make a name for lions by becoming the mayor and having a approachable face, kind of.
Maybe I just combined those two things in my head.
Well,
to give the Beastars some sense of purpose.
to be fair, I actually kind of drew a link between them too for very similar reasons. So in this school, and we even see like some students start trying to kill Louis because of the Beastar title might go to him, and that it will have implications. But after the scene with the mayor, I was thinking like, I'll bet it doesn't even matter. I'll bet it's 100% superficial. And what made me think about that was the mayor's teeth. The mayor is still a lion. The mayor can still eat meat, but he got surgically herbivored teeth implanted so he had a friendly smile. But that doesn't matter. He's still a jerk who's hiding murders so that society will. And I have this feeling that the whole reason that was presented to Louis, who is about to become the Beastar, is like, you ain't gonna change nothing. Who cares what smile we show the world? What matters is Shishigumi doing whatever it wants in the shadows.
Right.
You know, and that's why Louis makes a certain decision at the end, because he realizes this is all BS, just like the lion's smile. That was my connection I got the second time. So I do think there is a connection between those two.
That makes sense because
parts.
he wants to change the world, and he believes that being Beastar will do that. And then once he seems to find out that that won't be the case, he takes matters into his own hands of how he thinks he can change the world.
Okay, yep, I was wrong. The mayor was not a Beastar.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, Beastars, we don't know much about them, but we don't know whether they're carnivores or herbivores in the past.
Okay.
That's my hint.
All right. The drama club rehearses. We find out that Louis has actually broken his ankle, and he's running around on it. It's all taped up and swollen to hell. He goes off and hides, and then like rewraps it, and then comes back out to practice. He does this speech to like the carnivores, like, "Hey, I'm working hard. You carnivores better be working hard too." Then Legacy is told by the art department that he needs to go get flowers from the flower club, and this anteater guy takes him and says like, "I'll help you." And they get there, and he realizes it's Haru. The flower club is literally just Haru. There was other members at one point, but they all left, and she's the only one who takes care of the flowers. And Legacy's like, "Okay, I gotta get out of here." But the anteater literally did this to get Legacy laid, because he had heard there was a rabbit who will do it with anybody. So now Legacy gets abandoned there, and so he has to meet her for real now. And I think they have a really neat, cute here. It's very adorable. She tucks in his tail so he doesn't knock over plants, and and I love the scene where he's looking like right at her bandaged arm, and he's like, "Don't ask her about that." "Hey, what's going on?" "Did you just ask her about it?" You did. And she's like, "Oh, I don't remember. I guess I got hurt in my sleep or something." He's like, "Oh, she doesn't remember. That's awesome." And then after talking about flowers and him helping her, they go into the shed, and she's like, "Well, is there anything I can do to help you?" And he's like, "Oh," and he's trying to figure out how to keep talking to her because he's really enjoying her company. And he does that thing where he gets very internal monologue-y, and he's not listening, he's not paying attention to anything outside of, and she's getting undressed and starts
she
taking
assumes that he's trying to come up with a way to say, "Well, will you do stuff to me?" And so she's like, "Oh, I get it."
Yep.
And the line I referenced is not in this scene. He ends up, once he realizes what she's doing and she starts undressing him, he throws a blanket on her and is like, "Sorry, bye, I gotta go, I'm so sorry about this." And he runs away, and she's like, "Okay, that was weird. I guess I was wrong? Didn't want to do anything. Okay."
Yeah, she was 100% surprised that she misread his signals. And this, later on we find out this actually impressed her, that she couldn't like just woo someone like that.
There's some more scene stuff we've kind of already touched on. The story really picks back up again as the night of the play. Legacy comes to Louis to talk about lighting. He's like, "Hey, I did some different things in the last rehearsal. Did you like that with the lighting?" And Louis presses him, and he's like, "Would you show me your feral side? Knock off this pretending." And literally sticks his hand in his mouth. Is like, "Show me those fangs." But when Louis sees his reflection in the fangs, that kind of freaks him out. This was a really good scene, and again, has much more context once you learn about Louis' past. And then I also really, after this, he goes to, like, every animal species has their own species time. And so, like, Legacy's is going in a room with a moon projected, and polar bears go sit in a freezer. And
I love how they're like, "Is it a little warm in here?" And it's like -32.
The zebras hide behind black poles, and I guess that they just all feel better in their natural habitat.
The zebra's natural habitat is a zoo.
I guess. But Legoshi realizes for the first time in a long time that he's happy, and he figures this out because his tail is wagging. And let me tell you, when Legoshi's tail wags, I'm happy too. I'm like, ah, that's so cool. There's something about it, and it works so well.
I love that he's so disconnected to his own emotions that he has to see a visible indicator from his body to know what is going on? What am I? Oh, I'm happy. Okay.
And then the night of the play happens. Louis gives a fantastic performance as Adler, the Grim Reaper, which is like the first time it's been played by an herbivore because he's literally death incarnate in the story. And then, like he runs out and does this big jump and dramatic landing. You hear crack as his ankle breaks again. It's so rough to hear.
Really,
he does the entire performance perfect. The curtain drops, and you see it from his point of view. He's like, "Oh, this was great. I did it. I'm falling," and he passes out on the stage. And luckily, no one from the audience sees. Any thoughts on the play itself?
I thought it was pretty interesting. It was elegant. I mean, I've never been a big fan of plays. But I thought he did amazingly knowing his injury, just being able to hold things together. This is one of those moments where Lewis as a character just kind of skyrocketed in my respect for him. That was pretty crazy.
He wakes up in the infirmary, and everyone's like, "Yeah, you've had a broken ankle for like 3 days apparently," and then Bill is like, "Hey, just so you know, you definitely can't perform tomorrow." So Louis puts Bill is the step into the role of Adler as Death. So there's a good time to talk about Bill the Tiger, who is kind of
I love Bill the Tiger. He's horrible, and I love him for that reason, because he's like I'm gonna embrace who I am as a carnivore. I'm not ashamed of it. I'm strong. I was built this way. I'm going to take full advantage of it. There's a scene later where he gets an opportunity. All of them, a handful of carnivores, including Legoshi, get an opportunity to partake in something that clearly is not legal. And he is all for it. He's already kind of doing that, as we find out later. So he's a really interesting character. Yet at the same time, and all this while, I was still trying to figure out who killed Tem, the alpaca, at the beginning, and Bill was, a major contender in my mind, and but nothing that he ever did toward herbivores that weren't offering themselves up to be eaten, nothing he ever did seemed threatening. It seemed like he was completely under control. He had all his feral instincts under control, and so I found him to be very interesting, because it was like, here's a guy who, in your illustration, Troy, at the beginning, let's say he embraces his toxic masculinity, but he never points it at somebody who can't handle it.
Right.
He always points it at only other people with toxic masculinity. Is it really toxic at that point? No, because he's only pointing it at people that are willing to engage on the same level, so it's totally acceptable then. So he's interesting to me for that reason.
I actually did like this character as... he wasn't even really an adversary, just more of he reminds me of the stereotypical big jock jerk at school that's gonna push his weight around because he happens to be bigger than everyone else. But he puts on the kind face for public, and then he's gonna get his way to do what he wants. But he seems like a genuinely nice guy, but when he's presented with opportunities, he just kind of goes full force head without any sort of forethought.
Yep.
And I think he's just a big dumb kid.
Yeah.
That on the inside is a really nice person. Like, at least I think that's another fascinating thing about this anime as a whole. Nearly every single character is written this way, where they've got some sort of deep issues going on and some sort of outward appearance, and Bill falls into that. And even though he doesn't get a ton of screen time, I love that they even go with the ramifications afterwards. Like, okay, we're still in the same club, even though we got a brawl on.
Yeah.
I really love the way because when you see the scene, you're like, oh, he's doing a horrible bad thing, and then you find out, oh, by the way, society has this black market where way worse is happening, and it's just okay for all the other carnivores. So is Bill really being that different than the society he comes from? And no, Bill is definitely a product of his society. And like you said, he's a character who's like, it's not my fault I was born this way, and you could replace that, here it's animal, but you could replace it with any gender, race, or whatever. He's like, and I'm proud of it, and I'm just going to be it. I'm going to be it to what it is. And there's a scene where Louis comes in. Louis like, yeah, I actually prefer, what you are. You're fine with what you are. Unlike that Legacy who just wants to.
Which he was an herbivore.
Right. He literally talks about it with Bill. He's like, at least, you take pride in what you are, and that's better. But there is a dark side to it, as we find out. So he does have rabbit blood, which in this world, when carnivores eat meat, it helps them. It makes them stronger.
It might as well have been LSD or some sort of enhancing drug.
Steroids,
right?
yeah, it's some kind of performance-enhancing illegal substance.
Yeah, it's something to dope them up.
And I love how he's just like, yeah, there's this rabbit that's like selling like.
Right, he didn't kill anybody.
Willing.
Legacy smells it and corners him in the bathroom and confronts him about it. And Bill's like, yeah, so? Wait, you know what this smells like. How do you know what this smells like? And he's like, back off, Legacy. And we kind of skipped over the scene where they did practice, and he like starts a sword fight with Legacy, because Legacy now has to be in the play in Bill's old role, which is a very minor villain, but he has to have a sword fight. And Bill's like, we're both alpha predators, let's put on a show. And he gets like Legacy all freaked out, so we don't have to practice, we can really fight and make it look good.
Actually, it's funny, this scene is very revealing about their entire relationship. Everything is not that serious to Bill, because Bill comes at him hard, right? And Legacy just gets really, really emotionally involved. He's ready basically to go to the death. And then as soon as like their practice, or as soon as Bill's done, basically, Bill's just like, all right, great, I'll see you next week. Like he's just like, exactly. Like all emotions are just shut off, and it's back to normal. And here's Legacy just still worked up. And
I loved like even during the fight, the same thing was happening. Like, okay, on stage, this is happening. It's supposed to be Legacy's supposed to go out there and just, lose the fight, right? Instead, he gives him a black eye, takes him down, starts beating on his face. Bill just picks a moment and is like, Legacy, that's enough. You've done enough. This has been convincing. Now just fall over. And it's like he's still trying to do the play. He's not engaged in the fight at all.
Right.
You're absolutely right.
Brilliant. So Legacy walks out onto the stage, drops his play sword, and just starts beating on Bill. And it's really interesting because Legacy isn't really attacking Bill here. Legacy is attacking his own shame.
You got it.
This is 100% about Legacy and not about Bill. And Bill's a representation of it, because Bill is not ashamed for those very same urges that Legacy is trying to hide. But then Bill gets up and claws his back and just like tears deep. Like, it's not just like I'm scratching you, it's like I'm tearing into your internal organs back here, away from the audience. And so
blood is dropping down. He's so deep.
Yes.
In the dub, I love Legacy's line of like, I've always had a problem with blood. It smells so sweet and so sickening at the same time, and it's just really showing that conflict in him. So Legacy falls, and cats are like cheering and going crazy. And then Louis comes out and disarms Bill in front of the audience and takes the mask and puts it on. He's like, and I'm the real Adler. Because the audience at this point didn't know Louis wasn't going to be there. They were like, wait, why is there a striped tiger Adler? That doesn't make any sense. So now Louis comes out, disarms him, saves Legacy from whatever was about to happen, and forces Bill to run off the stage in shame. And in his dialogue, he's saying play lines, but he's like, I know what sins you've committed and then it shows the rabbit blood laying on the floor as it fell into the crowd. And then he helps Legacy up. And this is Legacy's like, Louis the man. Louis is the Beastar. I'm bought hook, line, and sinker. I'm committed to this. I'm down with it. And they get a roar of applause for this play. Love this fight. Love the cinematography of this whole thing. It's so good.
I really thought this was Louis making an enemy out of Bill, but once again, Bill can shake anything off. He is totally fine.
Legacy the next day has become infamous in the paper as the guy who changed the play. And we find out that Louis had scolded him and Bill and was going to like suspend them. And then these fangirls ran up and Louis got the idea of like, what if we just went with it? Like, what if we just like, that was all part of our plan. And so now Legacy is famous. And he finds this out from his buddy Jack. And Jack has been around. Well, this is like his first real scene as they have lunch in the pool. And he realizes, Legacy, you're different. And Legacy's like, yeah, I'm just not depressed anymore. I'm feeling my emotions. I'm embracing them. I'm not going to hide from myself anymore. And he's like, man, it's like you fell in love. Whoa, wait, whoa. You did fall in love. Jack is a golden retriever and has been Legacy's best friend for years.
And he is best boy.
And he is a good boy.
He is.
There's really not much to say about him. It's just he's such a loyal best friend, which is perfect for the fact that he's just this good dog.
You just can't help but see that every time you see him. They drew him so perfectly as like this sweet puppy dog eyes. It's just fantastic. Love it.
And also like a really good representation of like domesticated animal versus prime predator, you know.
Mm-hmm.
He's a little more prim and proper than everyone else and like staying within the rules. And so when Legacy is having these episodes, he's like, what's happening to my buddy here?
Yeah.
We then find out, so now that summer is starting, we see Louis visiting Haru, and we find out that they have a relationship going on that is not like an official thing, but they definitely spend a lot of time together. We'll learn that Haru is actually in love with Louis, and Louis cares about Haru as well, but because he is designated to save the world, he's got to do what his family wants, which is marry another deer.
Well, he said that he's got an arranged marriage.
Yeah, he's betrayed.
So he's like, you know, I really, really like you, and I wish I could be with you, but I already have a mate selected. Exactly. But he said something about the importance of offspring as well. So obviously species can't interbreed.
I guess that's true. We learn about the Meteor Festival that's coming up, which is really funny that animals celebrate the death of dinosaurs.
I found this amazing. This is so funny.
It's really funny.
But the drama club has to help with it and put on a presentation, so that's the next thing that they are focused on. And the art department is walking home. And it's been a few weeks, but like Legacy is still kind of treated as the guy who snapped off and beat up another club member for no reason, which is really funny because he's always been the nicest guy, but the one mistake sticks with him because of what he is, which is again is another really interesting society viewpoint that this show brings up, which is the flip side of kind of what it was saying before. It's
he did also kind of do it in a spotlight on a play stage in front of an entire audience of students on a spectacular second evening showing. But yes, I agree.
I love how a significant historical event for like us would be like, you know, 4th of July, right? And for them, a historical major event is a meteor crashing.
Yep. I kind of think it would have been funny if instead of being dinosaurs, like it was cavemen. And the cavemen were wiped out or something. That would have been really good.
That would be funny. He leaves the art department group after he smells Haru, and he sees her up in the dorms, and she's actually being bullied again. And the bullies run off when they see this giant wolf come up behind her. she asked him to lunch, and I absolutely adore this scene because this is the first time we kind of get Haru's viewpoint on him. He's sitting there being like, I don't know her name. I've never even asked her name. I need to get her name. And she's sitting there watching him eat, and every time he eats, she just like freaks out a little bit.
Yes.
Like, it just
Amazing.
instinctually, and she's like, man, this is not going to work.
And he's eating tofu. Like, it's not like he's eating a limb off of a dead animal or something. He's literally eating the most inconspicuous thing, but those teeth. Those teeth. Oh.
I loved the internal portrayal that they drew of like all of these dark rabbits around her screaming at her to run.
The
Like-
souls of the eaten rabbits.
Right. And it was just this like overwhelming instinctual feeling that this thing's going to murder you.
Yep. Exactly.
Eventually, he walks her back to the dorm, and he helps her with a buckle on her shoe, and it's a very cute scene because it's like they make eye contact for the very first time, and have like their very first real, no instinct, no animalness, just person to person connection, and exchange names, and his tail's wagging. I absolutely love it.
Yeah.
And I love how he's got a million miles of thoughts going through his head within a split second, but it's just coming out of him. Oh, my name's
Legoshi. Same
Legoshi.
I love.
I don't
the
know why I
scenes-
can't remember these names.
I love the scenes where they're animating the scene like normal, but it's in the frame of his face or her face as they're looking at the other one, and you're hearing, and you just know like we're seeing what they see. It's very much focused on what's in their mind. I love the way they presented sort of stuff like that.
And he comments like, "Wow, her eyes are purely black." And I was like, and when they draw her face like that, where the like it's just her eyes, but then like the background's like, that is the creepiest thing I've seen in a while.
I know.
Strange eyes.
Tanya and I were both talking about that. Like, that is not a cute rabbit. Like,
That's
that
like
is
nightmare
creepy.
fuel.
Yes.
Another murder is reported on the news. Now, when I first watched this, I thought it was literally like, okay, the serial killer thing. But now I'm watching it. Well, the second time, I'm like, is this just another random murder? And this just happens sometimes that a carnivore goes crazy and kills somebody, and that happens every once in a while.
It could also be the works of the Shishigami.
Yeah. Or a combo of the both.
Yeah, exactly.
Because of this, like the immediate thing is like Legoshi and Jack are playing a game with two herbivores, and they like immediately like we lose, and they just leave, even though they were winning because it's weird sitting in a room with carnivores. But then when Legoshi goes out into the hall, he sees a young female gray wolf being harassed by two other students, and he goes and he helps her. And this is the character Juno, who loves him so much, and she cray cray. She's straight up cray cray.
She is.
What do you guys
Yes.
think of Juno?
I really loved this character. She is absolutely insane. Has this vision of where she wants to be, what she wants to have happen in her life, and her day-to-day activities. And if anything goes out of whack, she does some of the craziest stuff. But I think my favorite line about her is when Haru's like, wow, she is aggressive. She is a typical Valley girl, kind of high school, but a wolf. So all of those things that Legoshi is dealing with, she also is as well. But she seems to be dealing with them much easier and uses them to her advantage. I love the scene with her and Louis. I'll comment more when we get to it, but yeah, that's fantastic scene.
Yeah. I think it's really interesting that she sees herself as competition for Louis for the next Beastar. And her desire is really to just kind of change the way that predators or carnivores are perceived. so that instead of being something that's scary, they're seen as something where that strength is protective and it's useful and it's appreciated. And in its own way, that's a noble ideal. She's kind of crazy. But I found her thoroughly entertaining, though. I enjoyed the character.
She's crazy in the way that, like, she presents herself as like, I want to be everyone's best friend and I'm super encouraging, but really it's I'm manipulating you all to love me so that I can become the most loving. Whereas Louis is like trying to rule with authority and like I will just be the best and you all recognize it. She's like, hey guys, we're all equal, but you should love me the most.
Yeah.
And if not, I might eat you.
And yeah, I love that she kind of came in as.
But I don't like conflict.
She's almost like an antagonist, but like you said, she does her goal is good. She's not. She doesn't want something bad, but it really. That's what I was talking about. This anime, it's not saying carnivores are good or bad. It's not saying she's wrong or right. It's saying it's bad that these carnivores are being prejudiced, but it's also bad that these carnivores are killing people. And how do you reconcile that?
You can't have them live together. It's that simple. You need more chickens.
Oh god,
more chickens with more eggs.
I also don't know if I agree with that being the moral of the story, but each their own. Segregation works. So yeah, he finds out she's in the drama club, and then the art team is sent to the city to get information for the meteor party festival. And they send like Bill and Legoshi and a couple other predators. And Louis warns them like, "Hey, stay away from the black market." And they go. They eat lunch at McDonald's. Bill talks about tiger sex a lot. I just thought that was very funny.
She's like, "Oh yeah, I'm just banging this girl."
She's got these sexy stripes, and they're like, "Stripes matter." He's like, "Oh, they matter. I'm a tiger." Well, they get lost on the way back, and this is where we come across the black market. And it's presented when they're in town among all the adults. They're like, man, society is super peaceful. Like, there's just not the tension here that we have at school. They could just feel it. And they get to this black market, and they realize this is the reason there's no tension. Because carnivores have a place where they can go and eat meat to their heart's content. We're told it's donated by hospitals and morgues, but then we see that that's not always the case. There is definitely even darker sides to it. And when they get there, there's literally a goat selling his fingers to eat for there's a price tag on each finger, and he offers it to Legoshi, and it's a great scene because it switches over to Legoshi holding the hand of Haru as she touched his finger. And he's thinking about her fingers. And he's smelling these fingers and the blood on them. And then Bill's like, we should totally do this. We can pull our money. We'll just share a finger. Legoshi is like, guys, that's disgusting. And they're like, no, it's not. This is normal society. This is how society works. We're in the real world. And this is okay. And even though it's the black market is illegal, like, no one's like sneaking through it. Couples are like walking hand in hand, just strolling casually down this market. It is just accepted that this exists.
It definitely feels like an outside cart kind of market. Like it's very much, it felt very much as like it was just a nighttime place to go shop.
Which is really weird because what's on display? It's a wet market, and what's on display is quite literally skinned, butchered, probably not cooked chickens, rabbits, pigs. Like, the other people that are just walking down the road around the corner, their dead bodies are literally just for sale right here. Like, this is Cannibal Alley is what it's really, really freaky when you think of it that way.
I know, Jeremy, you mentioned Tanya's, like, as you guys are vegans, is like, validated!
Yeah, exactly. Sort of vegan, vegetarian. I know some people are super sensitive about the difference. I'm not, but for them.
Any other thoughts on the black market? Because it definitely has major implications to like the world that we are presented with. Because we've so far been told like they eat eggs and tofu and that's it.
Right.
Yeah.
I think it's more of, you get these kids that are, basically being indoctrinated with, yeah, you're a carnivore, but you don't act on those instincts, and then they come to this cognitive dissonance, and it's just like, what do I do with this new information? And the other three are like 100% on board. They're like, yeah, we're eating fingers, and
Yeah.
Legacy runs from it because he understands that he feels like he's making the quote unquote right choice, but he also recognizes he has no leg to stand on to preach to the others. And this moment of him salivating, even though he feels that this place is wrong and should be criminal, is a great cognitive dissonance scene where he's grappling with these two worlds that have clashed into him, and he passes out.
Yeah. I thought it was also fascinating because as you're going to get into, Troy, we meet another character who actually looks for people who react this way, because this kind of a reaction is indicative to what I would call an addictive personality that realizes the dangers of even exposing themselves to a tiny bit of something that they may not be able to stop themselves. Like, they recognize a real danger where other people may not have that danger intrinsically because they're not, predisposed toward as much addiction.
I remember this. So Legacy wakes up in chains. Like, he's literally bound. He's muzzled. He's in chains. And this panda guy walks in. And this whole scene plays out. And it turns out there's a doctor, therapist / guard of the black market. And he's showing Legacy photos of carnivores who brutalize themselves, who eat themselves, all for the very similar reasons of, like, they just can't handle the shame of their desires, of actions they've taken. And I love that it's presented by a panda who's a carnivore who can sustain himself on just bamboo. And they point that out in the anime. Like, he is the guy who's in both worlds, right? And this is Gohin. Gohin, he's the panda. Guys, thoughts on him?
For one, I wonder whose decision it was to draw him without eyes. Like,
Right?
like
Yeah.
that was just kind of awkward.
Okay,
But besides
I'll be
that,
honest, every time I see him, I'm like, are there eyes?
Right?
I know. Yeah.
But I loved this character. He was definitely a close contender for my favorite character. Not only does he kind of get in Legacy's head, but he helps the audience understand not so much that, hey, carnivores need to eat meat, but like, if they go about it a certain way, they're really going to not just regret it, but it can be psychologically traumatizing. I mean, the pictures he was showing basically looked like the aftermath of meth users.
Yeah.
And it was very much, you go into this illegal act. It didn't matter what you were consuming. If you went into this illegal action that you knew was a wrong and you fell into the addiction of it, the self-harm that comes with it is so destructive that you ruin your life. And so he's trying to show Legacy this. And then when Legacy finally admits to his crush / desire to consume Haru, he's like, dude, cut it off. End it. You need this. No, just stop. And yeah, this added a whole nother layer to the anime, which I really appreciated.
Yeah. That he's the one that said that line about how, your love is just your hunting instinct masking itself. That's all this is. It's nothing more. And it was this moment where I was like, okay, that's exactly what I think it is. This is awesome. This is so awesome, because Legoshi's 100% convinced at this point that that's not true. But now he starts to doubt it. And I just loved it. This was like the mentor character to me in the sort of coming of age hero's journey. Like, this panda is the mentor.
Then he hands him a rabbit magazine and says, if this does it for you, maybe it's love.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
He hands him an adult rabbit magazine. And yeah, like you said,
Maybe you just have a fetish.
Yeah, he's very much like, this is obsession. The way you're doing this is psychologically damaging. Don't do this. And Legoshi leaves. And really interesting, he meets the Eagle from his group back at the train station. The Eagle's like, man, I couldn't eat the finger. Like, I just started thinking about all our herbivore friends and stuff, and you were right, I was wrong. And Legoshi starts crying because, like, someone finally understood him for, like, once.
Which makes me wonder if Bill and the other student did, in fact, pull their money and buy a finger.
Anyway, in the next episode, there is a really great... It's all before the intro, and it's this great story about a student who sits next to Legoshi in class, who's a chicken, who her eggs are made for the egg salad sandwiches that Legoshi eats on Wednesdays. And he's always like, on Wednesdays they're so good. And we just get this whole backstory of like how eggs are provided and how proud
job.
Yeah, how proud she is of her eggs, how hard she works to make her eggs the finest eggs in the world. And she like uses Legoshi as a metric. And then he's like, can I borrow your razor? She's like, no. Like she doesn't like him. It's very bizarre, and it's also fantastic. And we don't have the time to. We're running it low on time, so we can't go into the full thing. So, but if you want Beastars, enjoy this. Enjoy this. It's just
the one thing I do want to mention. I love how devastated she is when he's like, yeah, on Wednesdays they're just not as good anymore.
Yeah, she just breaks down. It's like, oh. That's so good. I recommend that if you have a funny bone in your body at all and you don't want to watch the rest of Beastars, just give this little part a chance. Just go watch the chicken scene.
It's just so good. Fleshing out of like, where do the eggs come from that they eat?
And just her expressions the whole time. The art is so great. Oh God.
We have a scene. This is the great watercolor scene of Haru walking through this wet forest that she can never get warm and comfy in, and it's a metaphor because during that time she's having sex with Louis.
Yep.
And yeah, so she's thinking like, I just can't feel comfortable in this relationship. The one relationship I want, and this is the scene where he's like, "Hey, I'm betrothed. You know that." We get their flashback of how they met. His horns fell out. She let him stay there and hide, and he was like, "I'll pay you money," and she's like, "I don't care who you are. I don't know what a Louis is, whatever." And they started a relationship. But when he's leaving, Legacy is at the door. So Haru hides in the shed, and then for like the next 5 minutes, it's Louis and Legacy being like, "So you're like friends with her? Why would you be here?" Legacy's smelling him. Yeah. What's your relationship with her? As they're feeling each other out. And then we get Juno finding Legacy in the drama club and helping him dance. There is a scene here where they're getting ready to dance and Legacy takes off his jacket, and I don't think I've ever seen someone animated taking off their jacket so well. It's like his elbows bend perfectly. Like usually, like jackets just like come off in anime. It's really weird. And then there was this whole like sliding motion, and every time I see it, I'm like, that's amazing attention to detail. That's incredible.
Also, I love the expression on her face. She's just like,
They do like the twinkles around her.
This is if you are liking animals, this is a good scene for you because Legacy is beautiful. Then when Legacy returns back to his dorm, Jack is there and he has found a certain magazine.
God, I love this.
Hilarious. And so they have this confrontation, and he admits to Jack that he is obsessed with this rabbit, but he tells him, but it ended up, it's just obsession. It's not love. I'm letting it go. And then later, when he is at the festival doing art, Haru finds him and comes up and is like, "Hey, I could actually use some help. You want to help me, Legoshi?" And he's like, "Nope, I can't." And then she's walking away. He's like, that was the right thing to do. Put the distance between us, make this a healthier relationship. And then when he's up on top of a dinosaur that they're creating for the thing, he sees Louis come over to her and like pat her on the head. And he does this like psychotic thing of crushing all the paints in his hand and then rubbing them into his cheek. And he's like,
Yeah.
I love her.
Yeah. Now that you put it that way.
Yes, that's exactly what it was.
I've seen it twice and been like, man, he like really had to get that paint out of his coat. That would take forever.
Yep. Yeah, the level of jealousy and like just emotional attachment that he's got with her right there already. Oof. My goodness.
Right, which is again, that plays into my portrayal of toxic masculinity and healthy masculinity in this, and how he's teetering back and forth. Okay. Then Haru and him end up going home together that night because she stayed too late and the Dharma Club had already left. So he asked her to walk with him, and while they miss their train, they're sitting there waiting for the train. She starts talking about that first interaction they had, not the real first one, but the other one where she started undressing. And he says something like, you don't have to give yourself away like that. You don't have to do that kind of stuff. And she's like, oh, so you know what it's like to be, one of the people that could die any minute in this world? And she gets really pissed at him. It's like, we're just done. I'm done with you. And he grabs her arm. And she's like, you let me go. He's like, no, we're not done talking. And then everyone's like, are you attacking that rabbit?
Yeah.
And this is a really cool scene because she makes him run away. She's like, you have to run away with me because they will literally arrest you for showing any aggression because you're a wolf. And as she's pulling him, she's like, they're going to catch us. You have to run. And so for like the first time, he has to exert that strength that he's been ashamed of for so long to save them both. And they end up hiding in a bathroom stall. And she points out, like, the way you word things, the way you phrase things, even though you're awkward and you're trying to be sincere, you come off so freaking creepy.
And
like
she even mentions, like, so they're held up in this stall. And even though it's like a tiny bathroom stall and he's so huge, she's like, he's still going out of his way not to touch me.
Mm-hmm.
Even at the beginning of this whole little plot line, he's like, hey, you want to walk home with me? Because it's not safe to be alone. And she's like, wait, what? And that's just the way he is. He can't help appearing like a monster at times. I love it so much. All right. They kind of reconcile and get over their disagreement. He was going to tell her that he was going to attack her, and he decides no, because that'll definitely end this. So I'm just going to try to make this last as long as possible and not tell her. And then Louis gets scratched by Bill, and then Legacy's like, "Oh, you scratch you suck." He's like rude to Louis for the first time ever. And then we get Juno arriving, and we find out that she's become super popular in the drama club. She's like as popular as Louis now. And then we get the great scene of Juno and Louis practicing together alone in the drama club. And at first she's all like, hey, help me dance. He's like being regular Louis. And then she pins him to the floor. And it's very like a very erotic pinning to the ground. And he's like, what, are you going to kiss me? She's like, oh, if I kissed you, I would eat you up. And she's like, but I'm not into that kind of thing. I just want you to know I'm going to be the Beastar. This is war. I'm going to have Legoshi. I'm going to have whatever I want. And he's like, well, good luck with Legoshi. She's into other stuff.
I did like that he pointed out, like, there's this moment where you see him struggle just for a minute against her hands. And he's like, you've shown your strength, meaning AKA she is so much more powerful than him, being a carnivore and him being an herbivore. It's even though she's drawn so feminine, she's still a gray wolf.
Yeah.
And then there's one last scene in this episode where they're back at the festival and the power goes out, and Legoshi leaves the rest of the group to go find Haru. When he finds her in the dark, she's like, "Oh, thank God, Louis," and hugs him. And then the lights come on, and she's like, "Oh, that's awkward." He's like, "Hey, I'm just glad you're okay." But Juno sees them and then realizes what Louis was talking about, that the wolf she wants is into rabbits.
That just sounds so weird to say.
Yep.
I love the scene coming up where Juno wants to talk to Haru, and Haru starts walking a little faster to get away from her, and then a little faster, and then they're both in full sprint.
Yes.
Okay, so now the story is going to take like a huge turn here, and it always caught me off guard the first time I watched this. But first, we get Louis' backstory. He wakes up from a nightmare, and he remembers being number 4. His original name was number 4. He was just a product of the black market, a child being sold to be eaten. Which we were told, hey, it's just dead corpses that are put in there. It's not that bad. But hey, there's live children who are also being sold. And that his father was this rich guy who also was buying stuff at the black market, maybe to feed carnivore allies.
I don't know. He had like this whole big pen of them below.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what he's doing with them.
Yes. But yeah, so he bought Louis and adopted him as his biological son, and is like, you're gonna change the world. You're gonna change the way this world is. So you're gonna live up to that name. And that's Louis' backstory. There's the reason he hates predators is because his living life was waiting to be killed by them.
Yeah.
And that's still very much a part of him. Like the power is a facade. He is a scared child, terrified of being eaten still.
And the change that he went through, because when that happened, when he was a little kid, he couldn't read, he couldn't speak, he didn't know anything, and he was actually not like a baby. He was years old. I think he said he was 5 or something. So to make that change from being like that to now being the most popular Louis of the Drama Club is incredible.
We get a scene where Louis still visits Thames Memorial, the murder victim from the first episode, and Legoshi sees him there, and then like a cheetah or a leopard tries to murder Louis. Mm-hmm. And this is where Legoshi finds out that, hey, he's about to become the Beastar, and us carnivores are freaking out about it, so we're trying to murder him. Please don't stop me. And Legoshi's like, no, I need to help him. I need to be his ally and not be this petty, jealous guy. So he goes to Haru and he's like, hey, I need to confess my feelings so I'm not in the way anymore. I just need you to know how I feel. She kind of freaks out, doesn't want to deal with boy trouble, and so he gets her to, like, tomorrow we'll meet up and confess. Meanwhile, she gets kidnapped.
Of course.
by the Lion Mafia, which is called Shishigumi. There's a bunch of events of, like, people finding her shoe. The mayor gets the shoe, and the mayor's like, well, I'm going to cover this up. And then the mayor telling Louis, like, hey, just so you know, I'm covering up the murder of this rabbit that you know. And that was what we were talking about, like, the mayor being like, I have false teeth. It's all about what you look. It's all about the projected image, okay? That's what we do to keep society stable. So we can't let people know that there's a lion mafia that just kidnaps people and murders them. So Louis is not allowed to help. And then Legacy comes up to Louis. He's like, dude, she's been kidnapped. Let's go. And Louis like, we can't help her. And just, you know, internally, Louis is like hating this. But he's telling Legoshi, I can't do it. And he hits Legoshi, like, you know, back off. And Legoshi's like, oh, so you want to see my power? And he decks him so hard, he flies like 10 feet through the air. I love that scene. And they get into a fist fight. And that's how their relationship breaks.
It's a little bit weird because seeing how fragile that Louis has been all this time, how he's able to take those hits from Legoshi is just a little bit, I don't know, it seems a little inconsiderate. It seems a little bit convenient and maybe like, I'm more powerful because I will it to be so. Anime trope-ish.
I love his internal dialogue during this, by the way. It's like, why are we sitting here fighting? I should be spending this energy looking for Haru.
Uh-huh. Yep.
So Legacy tracks her scent. He goes to the black market. He literally gets mugged by some alley cats. And then he's saved by Gohin, who's like, dude, what are you doing? He's like, I'm trying to find Shishigumi. He's like, well, then you're just going to die. He's like, yeah, I know, but I have to save her. I have to make up for the sin I committed, and I have to tell her how I feel. And so Legoshi figures out where Shishigumi is. He goes there. There's a lion guard who holds a gun on him, and he smells Haru on her. And he goes feral, and he beats the crap. He gets the guy to shoot his own ear off. But he doesn't kill him, because he tells him, Haru is my prey. And
right.
He's like, oh God, wait, what? Why did I say that?
Yeah.
So the guy beats him back, But then Gohin the panda shows up again and saves him and is like, okay, I'm going to help you do this, but you got to bite. Like, the only thing you have better than a lion is your bite. So you get a guy down again, you freaking bite him and you end it.
You bite him in the neck, man.
Yeah, you can't just have this feral side. You got to get it under control. You got to control your animal self. And so they have this really cool long fight up the tower of the lion mafia.
I just need to say how cool his bamboo crossbow is.
It is
He
awesome.
shoots it into concrete and it sticks.
Meanwhile, Haru, who's been put before this mafia boss, she's been forced to strip, forced to bathe for him, and he's trying to embarrass her by looking at her lady stuff.
Yep.
And meanwhile, is in her head is writing out a will or last letter. And this is where she explains stuff we already talked about, like, why she has behaved the way she's behaved and stuff. And she talks about she wished she had told Louis how she felt. She never got to, express herself. But then she imagines Legacy is there holding her hand. And she's like, why are you here? And then she stands up to the lion boss and is like, you can't embarrass me. I'm freaking Haru. I'm tough meat. You want to eat me? Freaking get it over with. I've been ready for this my whole life. And then when he goes to start tearing her apart, Legacy jumps in and saves her, covers her with his shirt, and then has this big battle with the lion boss and tries not to, but eventually does go for the bite, knowing that Haru will see this. She'll see the full animal side of him, which again really is like, hey, there's positive to this trait.
Right.
Puts the lion down. And they embrace. He collapses, and then they leave. This fascinating scene. They're walking out. They're outside the tower. And the lion boss gets up and he's like, "Oh, you didn't go for the kill. Let me show you what mercy gets you." He pulls out this gun. He's aiming it down the tower at Legoshi. All of a sudden, he hears a click behind him. He turns around and Louis shoves a gun in his mouth. And Louis is like, "Hey, Predator, let me hear you beg for it." and he blows this guy's brains out, and then he turns around as the other lions rush in, and he's like, "I'm number 4, and I'm back."
Yeah. I was like, whoa.
And that's our
Louis
ending
turns
scene
John
for
Wick.
Louis. Yeah.
Yes.
That's our ending scene for Louis. Now, Louis does have more story after, in the next season that me and Jeremy know what happens.
Yep.
So but we won't mention it. It is fantastic. But that is left as a cliffhanger. Like, what happened to Louis here?
Yeah.
Legacy and Haru, recover and they eat some food and they realize they've missed the last train and they're gonna have to stay the night in the city. And Haru's like, well, the cheapest place is this love hotel, so they go there. There's a lot of mature stuff that happens. He gets the second base. But what's really important is when he holds her in the exact same position as the first night he attacked her, and in the mirror you see him holding her in the attack, and on the bed he's holding her.
Even the fountains in the
Yep.
mirror.
Yeah. It's like it's a portal into that time.
And he confesses to her the truth, and she's like, "Yeah, I kind of figured it out. You're like the only wolf I know." She said she has a feeling, but yeah, she's like, I kind of knew. And she's like, but you have to decide, do you want to love me, make love to me, or do you want to devour me? And he's like, I don't know. She's like, well, it's up to you.
And he's like freaking out because she's making him make this decision. I thought this was so well done. And this is one of those moments where I was like, I don't know which way he's going to go.
Oh, also, this is the episode with the line that I referenced, which is, tonight, anything you do won't be a mistake. And I was like, gosh dang, I'm blushing a little bit right there.
But she shoves herself into her mouth, into his mouth, and she says, I don't know what's happening. My instincts are kicking in. And it was interesting that, they're in this moment of passion, and her animalistic instinct is, you're going to eat me, here you go.
Right, the body's like, if you're going to give yourself to this wolf, this is how you do it.
Exactly.
And actually, the words pop up on the screen. Their bodies know what their relationship should be.
Yeah.
So they end up just sleeping there, and she's like, I'm sorry about that. And he's like, that goes away. Don't worry about that. Well, And so they lay there in bed, and the next morning they return to the school. He gets in trouble. Like there's a baboon teacher who's like, "Oh, that was so bad." He's like, "What about the mafia?" She's like, "Oh, we don't want to get into all that. That would be. You shouldn't have hung out with a rabbit."
Yeah.
And then Juno comes to visit. He's in like the infirmary, and Juno comes to visit him, and tries to hit on him, and he's like, "No, I'm good. I'm perfectly satisfied with my current relationship." She leaves and runs into Haru, who's coming to see him, and they have the scene Jason mentioned. They have a confrontation, and Haru tries to like talk off, like, "Well, I could keep him happy. I know how to please a man," and Juno's like, "Well, I'm a wolf, and I could kill you." And it all comes down to this scene where at the festival, he's trying to find her to confess his love. She decides she's in love with him, and she wants to confess too. Meanwhile, Juno's on stage performing, and at the end of the performance, right when they find each other, she calls Legoshi on stage, and she's like, "This is the poster boy of carnivores. Like, this guy saves somebody. This is why you should have carnivores in charge. This is why we are better. Here's the poster child." And he's thinking like, "I just killed a lion. Carnivores are terrible. What are you talking about?" And then she's like, "Let's go light a candle and be lovers." And he's like, and then we just see Haru walking away from the festival defeated. Like, I get it. Girl wolf, boy wolf, they obviously look good together. And
Wow,
he shows
aggressive.
Mm-hmm.
I've been bullied a lot, but that was intense.
Yep.
And then he shows up on the stairs and he's like, "Hey, I don't like her. I want to be with you." She's like, "You'll just kill me." He's like, I probably won't.
Maybe.
And they have this great scene of like arguing, and it shows like her up the stairs and him at the bottom of the stairs talking at the same time, and he's chasing her up the stairs, and he finally gets to the top, and he's like, "It's because I love you," and he tells her like, "I will get stronger. I'll get stronger than my instincts. I'll get stronger than society, and I'll be able to make you happy." And she says, "Well, then I'll be waiting." And then we get our epilogue, which shows that Louis is still missing. The chicken is still working out and laying eggs.
Yes.
Life is basically continuing for all these characters. And then we get a teaser scene, which the way it's teased, it very much feels like if you've read the manga, this is very exciting for you, but I have no idea what's going on. We see it like from someone else's point of view, like a pill packet in the garbage in the bathroom. They walk out, Legoshi sees them and is like, "Oh, it's you. Come on, let's go. Why are you smiling?" And then it says, "We'll be back for season 2.
It seems like it's implied that the first person view is of the person who killed Tam.
Right. That would be my assumption.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. The only other option that I saw was that it was Louis, but I really don't think it is. I think it is the person who killed Tam.
Well, they're obviously taller than.
Good point.
So obviously, the red herring candidate they're trying to throw at you is Bill. I don't think it was Bill.
No, Bill's not that much taller than Legoshi.
That's true. I didn't even think about that. Yeah. All right, that brings us to our end. Any thoughts on that ending? I know I rushed through it.
I kind of didn't like it. I felt let down by the ending, just in general, because again, it goes back to the intro and how that foreshadowing was so strong, and I really enjoyed the ironic tragedy of it and what it foreshadowed, and seeing that is not where it went with this season, and that it was such a red herring. It kind of felt like they knew what to dangle as sort of a, hey, look at this situation and how, it might turn out. And it kind of felt like they were doing the same thing at the end here, where they're like, okay, we went all this way with the romance and everything, and that's what this is really about, is about the romance and stuff. But at the end, we want to dangle this other red herring in front of you to remind you, hey, don't forget, there's a murderer. I know we touched on it on episode 1, and we really didn't touch on it again the entire time, but hey, this place is dangerous. Remember that next time. Get your hopes up for more danger. So I didn't like that part.
I agree. So when I first watched this, I thought this was like a Noir murder mystery with a wolf rabbit romance subplot. And it's very much not that. But it is still very noir because you do still have the narrator with like jazz music playing in the background as he narrates his thoughts. I do also wish the murder had a little more attention given to it. But from what I understand, Beastars gets nuts. Like,
Yeah, that's what I saw in the wiki too. Yeah.
Things get nuts, and like each season or chapters or arcs are like there's a new big bad. It's very shonen. There's like a big bad that they have to deal with while their relationship gets more complicated, and then Louis and or Legoshi have to work together to solve the problem of the arc, and then they go to the next one and it gets even worse.
It just keeps getting worse.
So that I would think it would be resolved. I do agree that I wish it had been done in season 1.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's go to final reviews. Jason, what do you give it?
I thoroughly enjoyed myself. I'd definitely give this a 4.
All right, Jeremy, how about you?
I wanted to give it a 3, but there was a lot that I liked about it. Far more than I didn't like. So I'll give it a 4. And just for fun, Tanya said she'd give it a 9 out of 10. So I think that pushes her into the 5 category.
Oh, that's interesting.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, I am one of the group who loves the soppy romance, so there is no detriment to that for me. I love the weird genre bending this thing is. There's shonen fights, there's a little bit of mystery, there's love and romance. This is a hard anime to describe to somebody. The best you can do is like Zootopia for adults, but it is so hard to describe what you just watched.
That sounds bad.
Right.
I think that exists.
Well, the characters are deep and complicated. The story arcs are fantastic. The character arcs are so well written.
Yeah.
But yeah, the romance got me.
Well, for me, it's a 5. I loved it, and I was still loving it the second time, so it held up. So yeah, 5 for me. All right, the next anime that we're watching is the first 13 episodes of Welcome to Demon School, Iruma-Kun. This is a 24 episode series, I think, maybe 26, but we're going to watch the first half, 1 through 13, and then we will discuss in our next podcast episode. If you have any comments about Beastars that is not a furry joke, we've heard them, please feel free to leave a comment on our Twitter at Baka Podcast, our email, theanimebakaclub@gmail.com, or leave a comment wherever you found the podcast, and we'll be happy to listen and respond. With that said, I think we gotta get going.
If it's a really good furry joke, then it's okay, because I haven't heard all of them.
That's subjective.
Guys, now that it's done, you guys need to go watch Team 4-Star. Team 4-Star, the guys who did Dragon Ball Z Abridged, made a review video of this, and it's hilarious. It's so many furry jokes. All right.
Oh, I gotta see it.
Okay, let's say goodbye.
Thanks for listening.
We'll see you next time.
Sayonara.